Okay, so for this series of Horses Explained, we are learning all about the horse and the parts that make up a horse. And today I am extremely lucky to be at the home of Gillian Higgins. We are here at Horses Inside Out in Melton Mowbray, and we're going to learn about the musculoskeletal system from the expert herself. If you've seen painted horses, they were probably painted by Gillian. Let's go and learn as much as we can. So Gillian, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited about this.
I feel like I'm going to learn a lot. So can we start with, what is the musculoskeletal system? What do we mean by it?
Yeah, okay. So sometimes I think in anatomy, words can be little bit off-putting, and that's actually how I got into teaching anatomy, really. But so musculoskeletal system basically is the muscles and the skeleton together. But generally, if we say musculoskeletal system, probably including tendons, ligaments, fascia, connective tissue as well. And basically a good understanding of the musculoskeletal system, the anatomy of the horse, I think is so important for all of us, whatever we do with horses. Riders, trainers, owners, coaches, therapists, professionals in the industry. I think having this understanding of how horses work is just so vitally important, and I'm really passionate about it. I love bringing anatomy to life, and with the skeletons, muscles painted on the sides of real life horses, I think it helps people to be able to better visualise the muscles and the skeleton, how horses move, how horses work, postures, weaknesses, that sort of thing. But you can't look at the musculoskeletal system in isolation. This is the trouble. One of the things about anatomy, you see, got me started. That's a simple question.
It's perfect.
As human beings, we like to compartmentalise things. We like it to be super simple, so we can build it, we can understand it, and this is true. But in reality, the muscles and skeleton don't work in isolation from the digestive system, the respiratory system, the endocrine, and all the other systems. So, having this understanding of all the systems, putting it all together is, really, really important.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that your classroom is a perfect example of having tangible things to interact with, look at, and just be able to get a better understanding of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm super proud of my skeleton. So I've got two here to really show you. This one here, Lulu, she is a 3.5-year-old horse. And Freddie in the background there, he was my heart horse. He is super special. I had him for 20 years. He is the original Horses Inside Out horse. He's on the front cover of the books. He was at so many lecture demonstrations. So to have him as a skeleton carrying on teaching is just such a great opportunity. And we can learn so much from these skeletons. We built them hopefully with drama and movement to really bring them to life. But I think the thing you do need to appreciate, they are just the skeleton. Yeah. There's so much we can learn from them, but there's a lot missing, if that makes sense.
It's all the other parts that work in tandem.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And what would you say are some of the special features of a horse's skeleton?
Oh my goodness. So there's so much, really. In fact, can we move?
Of course.
I need to show you this on the horse.
Happily.
So this is the skeleton of the gorgeous Freddie Fox, and I think the first thing to notice about a horse's skeleton is the sheer size. The first thing is the sheer size of the bones, and the biggest bone in the horse's body is this one, the femur, the largest bone. And the thing about the size is it gives an indication as the amount of forces, the sheer strength of these bones, because the forces they're going to have to both create and absorb within the horse's body. The other thing that is a real common misconception about the horse's skeleton is the position of the neck vertebrae. We hear it again and again, and actually this is one of the reasons why I started Horses Inside Out, because so many people were, But I did have this one particular rider who said to me, he was a very, very good rider, advanced level rider, and he said to me, I am worried about this young horse because it's got some lumps in its neck. Okay, well, I'll have a look. I said, they're the neck vertebrae. Oh, I thought the neck vertebrae went along the top of the neck. And I like to think these days, with people having seen all the painted horses I've done over the years, that there is this understanding that the neck vertebrae are lower down than you think. And probably because we can feel our own neck vertebrae at the backs of our necks, we assume that the horses are going to have the vertebrae up here. But actually, they're not even in the middle of the neck. They're really quite low down. And the reason for that is because the head is a very heavy structure, on the end of a long lever. We're looking about 10% of the total body weight.
Okay,
So
just here alone.
Just here in the head and neck, 4% in the head, 6% in the neck. So if you think about it, if the neck vertebrae were along the top, the muscles on top of that would be the extensors that do that movement, and the muscles underneath flex. Well, gravity does that. So what would be the point of all the muscle underneath? So actually, when you start thinking about it from a mechanical perspective, it makes more sense. So that's the first, I'd say, anatomical misconception. But another one is a kind of follow-on from that, and that is about the back. Because we know that the neck vertebrae are lower down, but like I was saying to you before, we compartmentalise things. And in anatomy, we learn the anatomy of the head, the anatomy of the neck, the forelimb, the back, the hindquarters. But where does the anatomy of the head end and the anatomy of the neck actually start? And the same thing with this. So once we understand that the neck is lower down, we then assume, the back vertebrae must be up here. It's impossible because, of course, you've got the main function of the spine is to protect the spinal cord. So that's running all the way through. So the level of the actual vertebral bodies within the back are, once again, lower than we think. And then we've got these long bony projections coming out the tops of the spine, of the vertebrae. These are called the spinous processes, and they're particularly long in the withers to give attachment points for muscles and ligaments as well. It's really, really important. So we get this continuous nature of the back underneath the forelimb. And, the horse doesn't have a collarbone like we do. So this is another. Oh look, I'm doing all, bring them all out.
So many misconceptions.
All the myth busting. But yeah, so we have a collarbone to attach our arm, a bony attachment to the rest of our body. The horse doesn't have that. So obviously here we've got wooden screws holding Freddie's legs together. But the real horse will have a sling of muscles.
Okay.
Which we call the thoracic sling muscles, and these help to hold the thorax, which is this, up between the front legs. Some people might say, they attach the forelimb to the body, but if we look at it the other way around, most of the time he's standing on his legs and the weight is hung between. That's why we think of it as a sling. If you look left to right, it's like a hammock between the two scapulars, holding all that weight up in there. So we've got this thorax, this continuous nature all the way through. And I could talk about this for hours, but the posture of the neck and back are something that I think we all need to have a good understanding of. Because basically, as soon as we add the weight to the rider, we are going to compromise the horse's back posture. In fact, adding the weight of take away the word rider, adding sacks of potatoes onto the horse's
weight
back.
Of any kind.
Yeah. Weight of any kind, doesn't have to be the rider. But that is going to affect or increase the strain on tendons, ligaments, joints. It's going to put the back into a slightly more extended position. And this posture, an extended back posture, can be the cause or the root of many muscular, ligamentary and osteoarthritic problems that we see developing in the horse's back. And not only that, also in the base of the neck, because it's connected. It could also be the reason for many sort of like way of going issues that riders have. If the horse won't go on the bit, or is tending to go with a high head carriage, or gets the term hocks trailing on a dressage test, that sort of thing. So this poor back posture can be a cause of many performance and movement and even behaviour related issues. So I think it's up to us as riders, trainers, owners, whatever we do with horses, to have a really, really good understanding, not just of the anatomy, but posture and what we can do to make sure that our horses are in the best possible posture. So a good posture, if we think about the back, is when these vertebral bodies are pretty much straight or ever so slightly curved upwards. A poor posture happens when the back goes into a slightly extended, in fact, just hold that thought 1 second.
Here we go.
So here, these are the bones just of the area on which we sit. So I thought I'd just bring these to show you because I can really illustrate this a little bit more. So these are the vertebral bodies. This is this section here. So just the middle of the back. These vertebral bodies here, good posture, should be straight, slightly curved upwards. Poor posture, we go into a slightly extended position.
This is where we start pinching.
Well, you can see the effect. Okay, wouldn't happen quite.
Not as extreme.
This wouldn't quite be as extreme, but let me just try. They wouldn't overlap quite like that. But you can see these bony projections, these spinous processes have got closer together. And in that position, this is the posture that causes many of those issues I was talking about. Actually, this is something that we can do ourselves. We can feel ourselves. So if we just stand feet shoulder width apart, just first of all, be aware of where your spine is, then push your knees as far back as you can. Yeah, so you already had your knees locked out, didn't you?
Yeah, I've got bad knees.
Yeah. Okay, then tilt your pelvis forward. We're going to look super unflattering in this video. Extend your back, so push your tummy out, super unflattering. Now, in that position, your back is in this extended posture. Try to do a side bend. How far can you get?
Not very far.
Well, it's amazing. You don't keep Then, if we go the other way, so just bend your knees a little bit, pelvis straight, back straight, then do side bend.
There you go.
Suddenly, you get an increased range of movement.
Not easier.
The point of that little fun there was that when the back is in a good posture, the horse is able to demonstrate a full range of movement.
Okay.
So how many horses do we hear people saying, oh, my horse is really stiff, he won't bend? Is it that he can't bend, or is it that he's not in the right posture position? Yeah. And anyone that studies Pilates will know the term neutral spine, and that's really what we're talking about. When the back is in the best possible posture, you've got the best range of movement.
Yeah.
How do we achieve that? We've got to make sure that our horses are fit, that they're strong in their core muscles as well as all of their muscles, and they have a really, really good posture. I think that is just so important.
You've mentioned quite a lot of body parts.
Zoom through it.
Bones, muscles, ligaments, tendons. What's the point? What are they for?
All right, yeah, I'm going to put these ones down now. So, bones, first of all, they're there for creating body shape as much as anything. You know, these give the opportunity for muscles, tendons, and ligaments to attach into, not only to give the horse their shape, but then basically something to pull to create movement. They protect, so if we think about the rib cage, especially the first 8 ribs, which have a solid attachment basically into the rib cage, into the sternum here, and they really protect the heart and lungs, for example. If you think about the skull protecting the brain, the spine protecting the spinal cord. So it really is there's a lot about protection there as well as movement. Then we've got the muscles. The muscles are the contractile portion. So muscles have the ability to shorten and lengthen to create movement. But the mistake a lot of people make is that they think movement is just created from contraction. Oh no. Stretch and recoil as well. The stretch of structures. So external forces, either from the outside of the horse or through movement. So landing and the stretch and recoil from that kind of movement. That's transferred through the muscular system. But you can't talk about muscles on their own, because muscles are connected to bones via tendons.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to have to get another model.
Go on.
Well, hold on. So this is a leg with the tendons and ligaments still attached, and the muscles as well. Okay. So we've got, of course, they've dehydrated and contracted, so they're quite a lot smaller than in the live horse. We've got muscles up here, and in the lower limb, no muscles below the knee, so no muscles below the carpus, no muscles below the hock. So these are the tendons. They're super long tendons, and so the muscle attaches through the tendon to the bone to create movement. So basically the muscle will pull these tendons to help create the movement. But as I say, it's not just about contraction. The ones at the back in particular, when the weight bearing, when the horse puts all his weight on this, you can imagine jumping from a fence, for example. This joint will extend so much that the fetlock sometimes touches the floor. So this transfer of force is important. But tendons aren't just in the lower limb. I think because a lot of people we know about the tendons and ligaments of the lower limb, we assume, you think muscles above the knee, tendons below. Well, actually, every single muscle in the horse's body. Do you know how many muscles there are in the body of the horse, Nicole?
Enlighten me, Gillian.
You're looking at about 700.
Okay.
That's a lot. You weren't expecting that, were you? So all of these muscles up here, where they attach into these bony projections coming out the side, there's going to be a tendon attaching to that bony point. They are not going to be super long like they are in the lower limb, and they're not always like strap-like. Sometimes they're quite wide. Sometimes they're very, very short. But basically, a tendon is the attachment of the muscle to the bone. Finally, we have ligaments, your third question. What's the point of a ligament? Ligaments are very similar in their makeup to tendons, but they attach bone to bone. So you'd have ligaments coming across either side of these joints. Take the elbow joint as an example, just like our elbow joint, it's creating flexion and extension. There's no ability to rotate though at this joint or create lateral movement. So the ligaments are here at the side to just keep the joints in line.
Keep them together.
Keep it all, keep them all the joints within the body. There's ligaments helping to support it all. And then you've got fascia. That's one you didn't ask about, isn't it? So that's the connective tissue between everything, holding it together. And that's very similar to your tendons and ligaments. But you see, it's really interesting thinking about how all of these things work together. And I've got another model that I think is going to help illustrate this next point. This is a horse. Can you see it?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, okay, well, I should say this is a musculoskeletal system.
Okay, that sounds better.
Yeah, it does. I'd like you to imagine that these pieces of wood are the bones of a horse.
Okay.
And bones are not held together by gravity. Okay, Freddie's bones are held together by gravity, a few screws. But in the live horse, they're not like built one on top of the other like we would build a building with blocks. Instead, bones are held in space from tension, and we're talking positive tension. Okay. Tension isn't always a negative thing, of the muscles, tendons, ligaments, and fascia, holding them together. So I'd like you to think of these pieces of elastic here. Imagine that they are the muscles, the tendons, and the ligaments. So the muscles can contract to create movement, just like this. And also you can have forces within the body. If I was to throw it on the floor and get it to bounce, you get stretch and recoil, which transfers force through the body. So a horse with good posture, we could say good posture and good symmetry. This isn't far off, is it? But let's say this is a horse with good posture. When they move, the forces within the body are evenly distributed.
Yes.
Which is a good thing. That's what we want. That is going to help the body to absorb those forces and, promote longevity. Let's say now we'll put him in a poor posture. It's an extended back posture. And then the head goes up, let's say. The head go up that way. And they tend to stand, look like I'm standing. And we're both doing it. We're both collapsing a hip. Right now, we have an asymmetrical body, a horse in poor posture.
It's not looking as good already.
No, when they move, you can see some areas, this area here, it feels like it's moving loads. Other areas don't move as well. And actually, what we find is that these areas, they get more of the forces because those forces aren't as evenly distributed through the body. So, this is a greater risk of injury. Do you know what the most common cause of injury is within horses? And I'm not talking about kicks in the field. I don't mean trauma, as in, accidents, but I mean maybe riding-related injuries.
Jumping, strains.
You might think that. It's actually more generic.
Okay.
Repetitive strain injury.
Ah, a bit like us.
Exactly like us. Repetitive strain injury. So this is, you might think at a yard, people will say, that girl's horse, that got that tendon injury because she kept on doing shoulder in on the left rein. That's caused that repetitive strain injury. But actually, no, that's not quite the case. Because if they've got a poor posture like this, we could say we've got a really good rider that does loads of different varied work, and variety is massively important. So she walks on different surfaces, or they do hacking over uphill, downhill, across hills. They do dressage work, they do pole work, they do jumping, all different gaits, walk, trot, canter, a huge amount of variety, right amount of rest. But if they've got this posture and this asymmetry, every single step, and it doesn't matter whether you're walking, trotting, cantering, whatever you're doing, as long as you have a poor posture, can you see how the stress is going to be there?
Yeah.
So, well, it's a matter of adjusting this. It's a matter of working on fitness. It's a matter of working on core strength, flexibility, symmetry, working with your coach, getting the dentistry side sorted out, making sure the saddle fits, having a tweak here will get the worming right. And I'm sure I'm missing a few out here, but basically working as part of a system to make sure that the whole of the horse is in as best posture as possible to basically reduce the risk of injury.
Yes.
So that, I think, understanding how tendons, ligaments, fascia, muscles, skeleton, how it all works together is so important.
And it makes a lot of sense in the repetitive strain. It is regardless of what you're doing and how much, it's the fact that you're doing it at all.
Absolutely.
And it's that's going to have that wear and tear,
and
then gradual deterioration and breakdown.
I think that repetitive strain can happen because of a horse's conformation or a horse's posture, and that's where we as human beings need to recognise what the horse needs, and we need to be very careful that we don't. We need to pick the discipline for the horse and pick the amount of work considering the horse's body, recognising their weaknesses, questioning whether they are right for that job. And if they're not, it's us that needs to change, not necessarily them. And I think that's obviously we want them to be in best possible posture, but once they're there, once they're as straight as we can get them, they're in a good posture, they're fit, they've got the strength, then the question is now, what can they do? What's going to help them? Because I think the other thing to understand is that exercise is important for the health of the musculoskeletal system. Movement helps to keep the joints healthy. It's really important within our own bodies that we take all of our joints through a full range of movement on a regular basis, because it stimulates the production of the synovial fluid. That's the joint lubrication, basically. But it also moves the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments. It stops stiffness developing. So it maintains joint health. It stops stiffness developing. But exercise, so thinking about being cardiovascularly fit, not only helps to reduce the amount of fat, which helps us with our metabolism and all those extra benefits, but in terms of the horse as well as us, cardiovascular fitness strengthens the breathing muscles. Maybe you're thinking, where's she going now? Because let's be honest, how interesting are the ribs? You read a lot of anatomy books and you'll see, you get to the page on ribs and it says they've got 18 pairs of ribs, 8 true, 10 false, and they might say the difference between the two. They're important for breathing. And then you turn over and that's it.
That's the end of the page.
That is the end of the ribs. So I think there's been this thing, ribs don't matter.
Okay.
Interestingly, look, he had a rib fracture. And there are a few little rib bit fractures on the costal cartilage as well, if you look closely. And actually having fractures, I think, to this area in particular, where the ribs are quite small and it's quite accessible to be kicked or rolled on or something, that's quite common. But up here, I don't know how he managed that. That's quite significant. But anyway, the other thing about the ribs that I think we do need to consider is that basically we sit on them. If you stand just there and look down here, can you see how we've got this like rib shelf here?
Yep.
So if we think about the panels of the saddle, you're going to have the 2 panels of the saddle and the rider's weight pushing down on that. When you push down, the rib cage is going to do that. It's going to collapse. It's going to be pressed in, isn't it? So what we want to do to help the horse carry the weight of the rider, or prepare the horse to carry the weight of the rider, is make sure that the muscles that lift the rib cage up and out are super strong. And those muscles, well, I could give you a list. The dorsal serrate, we've got the costal levate muscles in particular, and so on. But basically, those muscles are the breathing muscles. So how on earth are we going to strengthen those? Bit of a question, isn't it? A lot of people say to me, oh, pole work, working long and low, hill work. That's all great, but the simple answer, cardiovascular fitness. We need to make them get out of breath. And here's a question for you then. If strengthening the cardiovascular muscles, the breathing muscle, the respiratory muscles, strengthens the back, supports the rib cage, then does that mean that horses need to be cardiovascularly fit to be ridden?
I mean, I would say that it would be optimal and ideal for all horses to be cardiovascularly fit. I want...
I'm not going to let you answer. I feel I'm going to jump in, because think about someone that's riding their horse at the weekend and they're only going for a walk down the road. They don't need to be cardiovascularly fit. They're just going to walk down. To do that job, they're going to walk down the road, maybe go for a hack for an hour and come back again. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that they're not fit. Maybe they're overweight as well. And the additional weight is also going to pull their back into further extension. So actually, it doesn't matter for the job. But what I will say it matters for is supporting the back, supporting the weight of the rider, and helping to prevent future injury or future problems developing. Because if all horses were fitter than they needed to be, they would have a stronger back.
Yes.
And I think that's actually really, really important. And it's something so simple that we can do to help our horses, is basically make sure that they are in an appropriate condition to be ridden. I think that's so important.
Okay, so we've spoken about being cardiovascularly fit. What effect does exercise have on the bones and muscles?
So we've said about cardiovascular fitness and about how movement helps with joint health. But we've also got keeping fascia, muscles, tendons, all the soft tissues basically healthy. And also, believe it or not, bone density. So if we think about movement, horses are designed, or they've evolved to keep moving. That is how their system has evolved to be healthy.
Okay.
And I think that is something really, really important. And if horses are kept, say for example, on box rest, and I think a lot of horses that aren't on box rest, unfortunately still these days have a similar effect because they have so little turnout. But that is not good even for the bone density. So we know that if horses are on box rest, bone density reduces, and that's going to have an impact on, well, the health of the horse and longevity really. So there's so many different benefits, and we've not even mentioned the mental side of things, the behavioural side. So it has a lack of movement, we could say, has an effect on bones. Yep. It has an effect on muscles. They're going to get weaker, they're going to get stiffer. The tendons and ligaments and fascia are going to get stiffer, reduced movement. And we found as well that it basically, these soft tissue structures need hydration. They could need good amount of lubrication. Okay. And a lack of movement causes maybe local dehydration as well as affecting the whole body, but it's this local dehydration which can cause stickiness and stiffness. More fat will build up, and that's not so good for the health of the musculoskeletal system. So it really can affect all the systems, the circulatory system, the lymphatic system, and then we come to the brain and the nervous system. How the horse is feeling is truly going to be affected. So keeping the horse moving is so important for, well, every single aspect of his anatomy.
Makes a lot of sense. So in terms of day-to-day management, why is it so important to consider the musculoskeletal system in our horse?
Well, I think it's all about protecting them from future injury, keeping them happy, healthy and comfortable. We've talked about reducing the risk of repetitive strain injury, keeping them mobile. I think all of these things are so important, and posture is a massive part of that. There's so many things that you can do on a daily basis just to help with all of these things. So I have got some poles that I lead my horse, or I say poles, telegraph poles on little blocks that I lead them out to the field each day. They walk over the poles for just a little bit of extra stimulation. Fitting things like that into your daily routine, asking them to go backwards, doing Pilates. And if you've followed my work, you'll know I'm quite into Pilates for horses. There's loads that we can do to gently stimulate these core muscles that we've been talking about, to improve their posture, to improve their symmetry, their flexibility, their strength, their suppleness. I think it's massively important. Looking at their management overall, so how much they're in, how much they're out. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, are limited on how much they can turn their horse out. If you're keeping it at livery, you don't have the same amount of control. But there's still things that you can do, even within your horse's stable. Thinking about different feeding positions with hay nets, for example, having hay on the floor, varying the positions to encourage the horse to move, as well as, of course, these Pilates exercises I was talking about before. So I think keeping movement, focusing on posture is really, really important. Looking at your horse and reading your horse. I think a lot of people, they think, I don't really know what I'm looking for when it comes to assessing posture. I would actually say you need to go on to the Horses Inside Out Academy and have a look, because I've got loads of resources there to help people. But sometimes it's just a case of actually taking the time to look. So how often are you walking and trotting your horses up? Once a week? Once a month? Yeah. Is that something maybe that a lot of people don't do because they don't know what they're looking at? And I say it doesn't matter. If you don't know what you're looking for, do it anyway, because you'll learn what your horse's normal is. Yeah. I think 1 day a week, don't use your grooming brushes, but instead groom with your hands. So feel your horse all over and learn what they feel like, how the tissue responds to you brushing their back with your hands rather than with your grooming tools. And I think that it's those sorts of things that we can, learning more about our horses, that's really going to help.
And I really like that idea of grooming with your hands, because I know that we struggle with managing the weight of our slightly tubbier ponies.
Yes, that's
and so it's just understanding where their fat pads sit and, what we can do to try and minimise those or work on other areas and strengthen those up. Yes. And we said earlier about being cardiovascularly fit, and do our horses need to be cardiovascularly fit to be ridden? But also I think that it's so important for all of our horses, regardless of exercise, work, our companions.
Oh, absolutely.
We've said it literally can affect their breathing. And so I think that all of these, methods, and having poles out and going over them on the way to the field, or taking them in a school, or even if you don't have access to a school, and going into a paddock and just, getting them to do some different stretching exercises, it all helps.
Absolutely. There's so much we can do, and I think the in-hand work is as important as the ridden work, and it also gives a great opportunity to bond with your horse.
Yes.
These Pilates, these pole work exercises, having a horse isn't just about riding. It's the connection that we have between humans and these incredible animals, and I think we really need to take time to really understand them as individuals as much as we can and listen to them. And I think a lot of the time I see people aren't seeing what's in front of them because they just need to take the time. And horses are so sensitive to how we are. If you've had a bad day at work and you come home and you're bristling inside because a person beeped at you on the road or something like that, you get stressed. Yeah. And horses are so good at taking that away from us. But at the same time, I think we need to say to ourselves, well, we need to return the favour. Yeah. Lower our energy. Yeah. And be open to them, and be open to their energy. I think it's so important. And it's lovely, so lovely.
And that's the thing, and even with the in-hand work, that gives you the opportunity to be able to see them, see how they move. Okay, that's normal for them, that's not normal for them, whereas perhaps if you were on board and you're, riding, you can't necessarily see those things. We don't all have the luxury of mirrors in arenas and all of the fancy things. And it's just being able to get our horse working in harmony with themselves.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, harmony with his musculoskeletal system.
There you go.
I like it.
Perfect. Well, I think that you've given us an amazing insight.
That's my pleasure.
Incredible. Thank you so much for having us at your Horses Inside Out classroom.
My pleasure.
I don't want to leave. Please, can we stay? It's safe to say that Gillian's classroom at the home of Horses Inside Out was a classroom I didn't want to leave, and I would imagine it's the same for you too. Together, we've been able to learn about the overall physiology of a horse. Was it what you thought? I had no idea that their vertebrae in their neck were so low down. Had you ever thought about just grooming with your hands? I know that we do here when we handle our horses at World Horse Welfare, because it enables us to really understand what is normal. You can feel the things that a brush wouldn't detect, and it's also a really great way of building a bond with your horse. You can build that rapport and really get to know them, because it's as beneficial for them as it is for us. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, drop us a comment down below. What would you quiz Gillian on if you had the chance? And subscribe to World Horse Welfare's YouTube channel, where you can find more of our episodes where we delve into what makes up a horse and what management styles can we adopt to make sure that we have happy and healthy horses.